we'll go ahead and get started. But anyway, my name is Tammy Wish Hamilton. I am the CEO and founder of Tammy's Beautiful Butterflies. And I want to welcome you guys here today, my family, my friends, my co-workers. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. This is something that's been on my mind to do for the last couple of years, and it was just hard to get it started. But I finally found the right people to help me get it going. So this is, most of you guys know that I lost my daughter. It's been about 9 years, so her 10-year anniversary will be in January. So hopefully next year when we do this again, we'll be celebrating 10 years. But this is something that's dear to my heart, and I don't talk about it a lot. I've been there myself. I've never really said a lot to people about it, but I've thought about it. I've said it, before. I never really said anything to my family, anything about it, but I've been there myself. So that's why I wanted to do this, because it's important. And I would have never thought that something like this would have happened in my life. My daughter, I would have never thought Tammy would have did anything like this. So I think it's important for us as I don't want to say black people, I would say. It's important for us to talk about it. Mental health, we don't talk about it enough. And I have an expert in the building that's going to share a little bit about that, Ms. Carmel Brown, will do that in her speech today. We'll talk about some statistics. We have some people on the stage that's going to be sharing information about that as well. But the organization, Tammy's Beautiful Butterflies, I started it back in 2018. I just let it sit on the shelf. I was not ready to get out and start talking about it. I wasn't ready. I didn't think I was ready yet. So last year, I said, Tammy, you need to get going. So I finally was able to connect with Cahokia High School. They gave me an opportunity to come in to talk to their students. So that's how I really got started, by reaching out to one of the local high schools, and Cahokia gave me an opportunity to come in to share with their students. So that's what I've been doing now, doing some QPR, question, persuade, persuade, and refer. Question, persuade, and refer. And that's what kind of training I've been doing for suicide prevention. And I'm getting ready to do what is called self-talk training. So I just received a grant from American Foundation of Suicide Prevention to get that started. So that's going to be the next training that I put on for the local high school. So when we get that going, that's going to be something that we're going to be doing on an annual basis. So I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the program today. We have several people. I'm nervous, y'all. I'm good. But anyway, so I just want you guys to sit back. We're doing this program tonight for scholarships for the local high schools. Because Cahokia gave me an opportunity to start this, I want to start doing some scholarships with them first before we reach out to some of the other schools. So we're going to work with Cahokia High School. My goal this year, which is do $5,000, hopefully we do several $500 scholarships. So far we're at $4,000, and I want to reach that $5,000 goal. Hopefully we can reach that. There's some other folks, we have QR codes out front. If you guys want to donate, if you still want to donate, you can, or know other people that may want to donate, you can do that. And we're going to work on a committee to put together to get these scholarships put out. And I'll be announcing that and let you guys know when we do that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce the MC to you guys. Her name is Antoinette Ayers. She is passionate about inspiring people who need a shift in their mindset. She has conducted a vision takeover session for students at Southern Illinois University, Evansville. She shared insights on the principles of vision and how to achieve their goals by identifying their purpose and setting achievable targets. Antoinette has also shared her message at various events, including universities, panels, churches, women's shelters, the Woman Evolve Conference at the Potter's House, T.D. Jakes Ministries, and the Boys and Girls Club in Alton, Illinois, among other small and large platforms. She is a mother and entrepreneur who hails from the city of Champions, East St. Louis, 89 blocks. Her motto is, I owe God, and ROI, return on investment. So welcome, I want you guys to give a warm welcome to Antoinette Ayers. And then also, I want you guys to know that she is going to be working with me with the That's What She Said project. project. That's the next project. You guys will be hearing more about that. I am the producer of that project, and she is going to be my director of that project to work with all of the speakers. So welcome, Antoinette. Thank you.
Good evening. Well, let's first start off and say we are going to loosen it up in here, okay? You did hear I'm from East St. Louis, so I'm a different type of saint, okay? And I believe if we get a time to laugh, we get a time to smile, that we need to do that as long as we can, okay? So I need you to look at your neighbor and tell them they look good. Tell them they smell good. Nice to meet you. Yes, I want us to greet one another as we got to sit next to each one another and break bread with one another. It is a must that we know one another. I stand before you as a 3-time suicide attempt. The Lord didn't see fit, so that's why He has me here today. And so I praise God on today. When I said I owe Him an ROI, I mean I owe Him a return on investment. Because when I thought it was my time to go, He said, no, baby girl, you got work to do. And I can tell you now, He sent me on a mission, okay? Sometimes I want to choke y'all folks out, but He said, no, I ain't taking you out. So I'm still here today. I want to give thanks to Tammy for having this event. It is important that we understand the dialogue between African Americans in suicide prevention. We have one of the lowest ranking in suicide prevention. However, I think it's one of the highest. Only because it's the lowest, because we do know that African Americans report the lowest disparities in the community of hospital, mental illnesses, and all of those things. And so as tonight we engage in this, I want you to know that it's not uncommon for it to be your daughter. That it's not uncommon to be your cousin. That it's not uncommon to be a doctor. That it can be anyone from smiling to depression. I want to tell you, I lived in depression for over 28 years, and it was when the therapist said, how come they haven't put you on medicines, when I realized that God was a miracle worker. And so I want to tell you, suicide has no face. Suicide is a broken heart. And it has no symptoms. All you have in this world to give back is love. So tonight we're going to love on Tammy through her memories. We're going to love on Tammy as she gives back to those little girls, those little boys that still are living here today. But most importantly, we're going to send our kisses up to heaven for Miss Tamara right now as we hold our breath right now in silence to give back her love. Thank you. Now I'm going to go over to our next speaker. I'm going to introduce her, Javon Quinn. Javon Quinn is, I'm sorry. Okay, we're back. That was a test trial. Okay, I'm sorry. Now we're going to bring up is Tamara Vaughn Walker, and I'm going to read her bio. Tamara's passion for youth advocacy and community organization started when she was 16 years old. After losing several childhood friends to gun violence and the criminal legal system, Tamara devoted her career to improving conditions and systems impacting youth, particularly Black youth. Tamara was raised in East St. Louis and educated by East St. Louis School District 189. Y'all know I like it already. Tamara serves as the Juvenile Justice Council Coordinator for St. Clair County. Her work focuses on reducing racial disparities in the juvenile justice system. Education justice, improving youth mental health access, suicide prevention education, human trafficking, awareness, and organizing professional development opportunities in previous roles. Tamara served in after-school programming, maternal health education, and coordinated resident services for public housing families engagements, and system transformation. If you don't mind, please give a hand for Ms. Tamara Vaughn Walker.
All right, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to Tammy for organizing this event. And I just recognize your bravery. And I think when God puts something in our heart, we have to move on it. And I honor your bravery for moving and getting us all together. And so I'll just start by saying, for anyone who's ever dealt with suicidal ideation or suicide, you are not alone. forgotten and you are in community. About a year ago, I was reapplying for the Juvenile Justice Grant, and it was in my heart to write the grant to prioritize ensuring that our school systems had access to suicide prevention education. At the time, I didn't know all of the details. I just knew it needed to happen. I didn't know who the facilitator was, but I knew what the problems and the issues were. And about a month after submitting the grant, Tammy and I had a conversation, and she told me about her baby, Tam's beautiful butterflies. And again, that's why I say when God places something on your heart, you know, you have that duty to just follow through, not necessarily knowing the ins and outs. And so from there, we talked about making sure that we wanted to get resources and services out to the community so that it's not this a long conversation or people feeling stigmatized by suicide. And so also just recognizing the work of the St. Clair County Suicide Prevention Alliance and Tammy's work and their work with the American Suicide Prevention Foundation, that's key because again, that's another way to get information out to the community. And just thinking about schools and certain things that they recognize, it's important for educators to even have this information and be able to share resources with families, even just educating personnel, and not only just thinking that it's the young people that have these suicidal ideations, but even recognizing the issues that adults carry. Because, you know, life right now, I just figure if we're surviving life after a pandemic and all of these things that we keep, you know, seeing on the news, it's impossible not to have some type of mental health issue. And if so, that's not abnormal. And so, in order to better support young people, you know, we wanted to make sure that, again, resources were out there. And I'll just mention, for St. Clair County, in 2021, our numbers were up to 37 suicides. For 2022, the number was 28. And right now, our numbers are on decline, and I pray that that's how that continues to play out. But I do want to mention, just in my own life, when I was a 7th grade student attending school at East Point Rock Junior High School, one of my classmates, you know, he died unfortunately by suicide. And so I remember my classmate being bullied by other students. I also remember my classmates' parents getting frustrated with the school system because the issue, it was not resolving itself. And so I've never forgotten about my classmate. And so, like I said in that bio, after losing young people, my peers, it just sent me on a journey, you know, to do this work, again, not knowing how to do it all the time, but just knowing that it's necessary. And yeah, and again, I just want people to know that it's important also just to learn about Illinois with the mandates and different things that the schools need to carry out legally, having these conversations with family members, not thinking that it's taboo, or if I talk to somebody about it, it just may prompt them to do it. It just may very well save their lives. And so I'll just close out in starting the way that I came on, just to say again, if you ever had the suicidal ideation or if you've lost someone to suicide, just know again, you are not alone. You are not forgotten, and you're in community. So I just thank you, and Tammy, blessings. Thanks.
Thank you for those words. As I was sitting, I couldn't help but to recognize God's voice and what he says in the atmospheres, and so I respond when I hear his voice. God only wants us to also know there is another part of suicide that is left untalked about, and it's the spiritual suicide. That part is when you deny yourself from going after the dreams that God has told you to go after. It's the part where you hear something and you put it on delay. It's the part where you can't go to sleep at night because it's something ringing and clinging onto you. That is why Tammy had this event, not just because she suffered a great grief, but she knows there's more to it attached to the grief. And so as you sit in your seat, I want you to think about those dreams that you still have time to achieve, that you have time to do those things, because you don't know who's looking at you, because someone else will need your story. So as we talk about suicide preventions, let's talk about all of the elements of suicide preventions. And let's give Ms. Walker another hand. Now again, because I'm still churched, I need you to look at your neighbor and say, how are you? How are you? Okay, we're going to check in, okay? Because we're talking about some deep stuff, and so I believe in checking in with our neighbors, okay? Ask your neighbor, are you okay? Okay. Need some high quality H2O? It's water, water. Okay. Next we have on the program, Ms. Stevie Eckridge. Ms. Eckridge is a Greenville University student majoring in law with aspirations to become an attorney. Stevie is a bright student who values health and awareness of her own needs in order to better not just herself, but also those around her. It took several steps in parts of her life that she had to keep in order for her to become psychologically, emotionally, and physically well. Even if she is doing very well at the current institution, one of the most prevalent types of mental diseases that Stevie has also faced is depression and anxiety. She aspires to raise awareness of suicide and contribute to change using her experiences. Stevie's primary objectives are to be conscious, intelligible, and self-aware. Give it up for Miss Stevie Kai Eckridge.
Hello. Good evening. I'm nervous, so bear with me. And I wrote my testimony on my phone because I'm a teenager, y'all. So I'm gonna just read it from my phone, okay? I'm Stevie Kai Eckridge. I'm 20 years old. I am African American. And when I was 10, 12, 15, and 17, I almost died by suicide. Having self-awareness is, in my opinion, the most crucial component of life that most people prefer to overlook. When we are living in the light of God, we occasionally lose sight of our significance in the world. The reason we're put here and the purpose of our existence. I had lost my sense of significance and place on earth at an early age. When I was 10 years old, I nearly committed suicide by taking too many prescription medications that belonged to family members in my house. At this time, it was 2013. I was transferred from East St. Louis District 189 to Fairview Heights District 118. It was difficult for me to switch schools districts since, in addition to being one of the few black students in my courses, I was academically behind every Caucasian student because the curriculum was more advanced than what I had been exposed to. That transition was difficult for me because I felt inferior. I felt inferior to my classmates because of our cultural differences. On one particular afternoon at school, I was in my English class with a teacher that I felt who didn't care or understand me at all. We were working on learning how to write essays, but I was having trouble understanding. The teacher at that time had the intelligence to see my weakness and the help I would need to guarantee that I mastered the skill, but she yelled at me instead. I felt abused because of who I am and my lack of academic exposure to English language arts. Because hurt people, I did what any bad child would do from the hood, sorry. I flipped her off behind her back. And because I felt mistreated. Although I did it to where she didn't see it, somebody still told her, another student. So I was given a write-up, a suspension, and it was my first one at this school. And I knew I was in trouble at home. I felt really bad. I cried. And I also knew I shouldn't give her the middle finger. But the way she made me feel left me feeling helpless and stupid. I returned home from school, and because I didn't want to get a whooping, and because I was feeling so depressed about it, the first thought that came to my mind was to commit suicide. I was operating solely on emotion at this time because I had no idea what suicide even was or signified. So I just did it. I took so many medicines that I can't even count them now. All I could recall was being sleepy the entire day and dozing off in the strangest locations around the house. Sorry. Every Monday after school, my sister and I would usually watch this particular TV show, but on this day, the drugs I had taken left me so drowsy I couldn't even open my eyes to watch the show. My parents sent me off to school the next morning without telling them what I had done. I tried to have breakfast at school after getting ready for school, but I soon dozed off and couldn't be roused. Due to my tiredness, I was unable to make it to class. I was wheelchaired to the nurse's office. My mother was called to the school, and I just wanted to vanish off her completely because I knew I would be even more in trouble because I didn't pass. I took away from this experience that there will always be difficulties in life that you cannot avoid. To become conscious of the circumstance and understand how to handle it if it were to occur again, you must go through it. When I realized this, I decided to simply take my first slip home and cash it in for a whooping this time. I had learned what being suicidal meant by the time I was 12 years old. At this point, I was gaining weight, giving up sports altogether, sad, failing middle school because I just transferred from a different school district, and afraid of everyday occurrences because I had anxiety, and I just felt alone at home. I remember being home alone one day and feeling just sad and depressed because it seemed like no one cared about me, not my family or friends. A simple bobby pin that you put in your hair was lying around the house. I bit the ends off the bobby pin. I bit the ends off the bobby pin to make it sharp, and I would dig it into my skin to help me suffer in silence. I'm not sure what motivated me to act in that manner. It just happened. At such a young age, I was going through emotional turmoil. Up until the age of 17, I self-harmed myself using a variety of razors, bobby pins, and knives from my wrists, my hips, my legs, my arms, and my hands. I was admitted to a mental health facility when I was 17, and it was there that my life was free from inner turmoil and self-destructive behavior. I would generally wear long-sleeve shirts and jackets to cover up my bleeding scars, but this particular morning, I was so emotionally exhausted that I failed to do so, and my mother noticed my arms as I was getting ready for school. My dad was called into the room after she yanked me, after she saw my arms, and then immediately drove me to a mental health hospital. A nearby counselor then entered the room and signed me up for counseling. But it kind of stunned me even more to be in the hospital bed with my parents beside me, listening to me explain to the doctors why I wanted to kill myself. While counseling is important, it is ultimately up to you to become who you want to be. I started going because I didn't want to see my parents suffer, but also I knew I wasn't physiologically stable. I discovered how to improve my well-being by increasing my social circle, finding a job, pursuing interests, finding hobbies, and changing my diet. My life improved once I returned to District 189. I was successful in honors classes. I met a lot of people, and due to my skin tone and the culture I was reared in, I also felt at home at Eastside. I started to recognize my own value, beauty, innocence, intelligence. I believe I have acquired the skill of self-awareness since the age of 17 because I no longer self-abuse. I will be a junior in my four-year institution this upcoming semester. I am a collegiate cheerleader. I have a lot of confidence, and I'm a beautiful human being. Yes. One day, I wish to use my experiences to assist other young children in need who are going through the same things I was at a young age, as well as raise attention on the need of self-evaluation and learning how to control our emotions. Being self-aware doesn't mean you have to know it all, but it just means that you recognize your strengths and your challenges, and you're aware of what the person you want to be remembered as and how you want to be seen through God. Given this, Thank you for listening to my experiences and listening to how I almost once was a victim to suicide, and I hope you take my story and share it onto others to help them as well. Thank you.
Let's stand up and give this lady a hand. We are so proud of this that she decided to fight and to win. Her story is necessary because there are many of children, many of adults who don't have the courage or the boldness to stand in their story. So we thank you, Stevie, for having the courage. I just realized she's family. So I am just up here just proud right now for this moment. So it kind of threw me off. I had to recognize, wait a minute, this baby Stevie. So it threw me off. So God, I thank you for her life. At this time, we will go into prayer. I need to check in with y'all. Y'all hungry? Look at your neighbor and say they're hungry. I felt it in my spirit. You was hungry. I felt it in my spirit. Well, we're going to go before the Lord in prayer. I ask right now that you all keep in mind that as we go to this sacred place, that breaking bread with one another is the most powerful thing that we can do with one another. As we go into prayer, I ask that God place a name on your heart. Place someone that you love on your heart as you call out their name in prayer. Father God, we come before you this evening and we say thank you. Thank you, God, for your strength. Thank you, God, for your love. God, we thank you right now that you dug deep into our hearts, oh God, that we're able to stand before you right now. God, we ask right now a special prayer request for Tammy. That as she does this, as she moves at your will, God, that you give her maximum overdrive love. That you soak her in your fragrance of love day and night, oh God. That you wrap your arms around her, oh God, when no one else sees her. God, we thank you for the legacy that she's carrying on for her daughter. And we thank you right now for everyone in this room that's helping her carry on that legacy. God, we ask right now, oh God, as we pray over the food, oh God, that all infirmities be blocked in Jesus' name. And God, as we break bread with one another with those names on our heart, oh God, we ask right now that you be the change maker for them, oh God, that they find you as they endure in life. It is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I do know there's a buffet outside. I'm not for sure they're doing it by table, but if you would like, I think you just grown enough to go out there and go eat. Y'all want to eat? Y'all want to eat?
Only one answer. time you be out here and people.
Real fast, huh?
Well, what do you mean real fast? No, oh yeah, the camera here is but since I'm doing the work, editing, I'll take that out.
I need to learn how to do that.
And I got 185 minutes on this battery here.
Okay. That is. I guess that is a lot. That's a lot.
60, 120, 3 hours. I'm gonna get this out of the way now.
Okay.
I said I bring the heat to the stage like I'm solar heat. See, my words break strongholds and yokes, make myself harvest poetic proverbs when I'm speaking. Like them Buddhist monks who meditated or top 10 wisdom. Just tell them I'm trying to be this generational Shirley Chisholm. Now I know, some call my approach a neurostimulation. Educated words. See, my verbs and nerves were operating on my third outline like dry cleaners, Zucchini, starch to the scene, press refutable thoughts in your mind. I said these words burn your mind like a natural hot spring. Just raw like red meat and uncut like BET late night sneak peeks. See, tell them I'm nice like that, poetically. How y'all doing? It's always that odd moment after the thing, and then I ask how the crowd is doing. They're like, hey. Look, I always tell people, you're not getting your money back. The food look like it's delicious. I'm vegan, so I ain't get to eat it. It's all good. First and foremost, thank you to Miss Tammy for inviting me for this wonderful event. I myself am an individual that has dealt with suicidal ideations as well as depression and anxiety. Recently, December 2019, I attempted suicide, which led to my friend Rodney right here. But nevertheless, that's the depressing part. Let's get to the uplifting part. So this piece that I'm going to do for you guys, I'd like to say it is my kudos to individuals that understand what agape love looks like. The love that holds no record, the love that is not taking tallies for you did this for me on September, and now I owe you back on October. This piece is entitled Loving with No Restrictions. Never stingy with my love, but I give it out by the caseloads. Like Sam's Club, no membership required. I said, baby, you can get this in bulk. So you see, you can just soak in my love like Epsom salt, bad bees, oatmeal, old rivers, juice, whenever needed. And unlike annoying sidewalk meters, you continue to feed due to time restraints. Just tell them it never runs out. Matter of fact, just call my love community college, because it turns down no one. I be loving you with the type of love that prays for you in and out of season. Sharing to the victims of God's blessings, baby, even when you can't see it. A love that goes above and beyond, so they just call my love overachievements. Finding what pleasures would you build me up with my tongue rather than tearing you down. See, I be planting seeds into lives more than farmers do. I'm more concerned with being a tree that bears good fruit. So if you need an olive branch, I got you. No need to worry about me casting judgment on anyone, because he said that he that is without sin cast your first stone, so your shortcomings and sins, I said I can't even spot it. A love that is not based upon what you can do for me, so far as a friend. You just take out of your vocabulary when upon referring to you. So you see, I love you until you get used to hugs, until ulterior motives is no longer a synonym of love. I love you even when you can't stand to love yourself, because the body of Christ, we ought to be concerned with loving one another. I love you when the rivers of wealth run dry. I love you when you don't have a car 275 running for that bus because it just passes by. Let's see, I be loving you when your gas, electric, internet all get cut off. I be loving you when you make that same repetitive, redundant, prideful mistake. I said, together, me and you, baby, we can pick up your face. Let me repeat it. So I said, I love you when your gas, electric, internet all get cut off. I love you when you make that same repetitive, redundant, prideful mistake. I said, together, me and you, we can literally pick up your face. So I love you like the circumference of a circle, 360 degrees all the way around. Because if loving you with no restrictions means holding nothing back, then never should you be afraid to do this, because you know I'd be the one to catch you when you slack.
loving with no restrictions. Thank you.
Yes, y'all was supposed to snap. I know y'all supposed to snap when y'all heard the punchlines, right? Okay. I'm gonna take y'all to rehearsal again. Okay. Next, I have the honor and the privilege to open up and announce this beautiful Black queen. Her name is Carmel Brown. She is the keynote speaker for this evening. I'm going to go a little off script for a moment. I've sat in the room with Miss Brown a couple of times, and I've seen her interact on Facebook. I might have posted something crazy underneath one of her status. I don't know. Charged it to what I was feeling that day. So I'm just playing. But it's when you have women, especially powerful women who help heal the community, I think it's very important that we take our time to nurture them and we give them their flowers while we can. So as she speaks to us and enlightens us and informs us, she's pouring from her overflow. And as she pulls from her overflow, I hope that you guys pick up the nuggets so you can carry on to those that are watching you, to those that are needing you. And give her flowers as she stands up here and speaks. I'm going to read her bio right now. Ms. Carmel Brown, LCP, is a licensed therapist with 20 years of experience in the mental health field. Carmel spent the first few years of her career working in criminal justice with the state of Missouri as a probation and parolee officer. I'm going to pause because I think this was funny, y'all. I said, I'm in here with so many people that's with the law. Oh, I'm so glad that God saved me. Y'all know that? Yes, there's some law enforcement up in here that I had no clue. Tammy, I didn't know you was with the law. Ms. Carmel, I didn't know you was with the law. Cameron with the law. Listen, he saved your girl, y'all. Glory. Her experience has mostly been in private practice, residential crisis, and inpatient treatment. She specializes in couples and family counseling, mental health, and corporate wellness, while very passionate about the mind and the body connection. Carmel is the owner of Carmel Brown Counseling, Consulting, and Coaching. Carmel is also the owner of Your Exhilarating Life Therapy Service and a group therapy practice where she and 4 other therapists offer therapy via telehealth. Most recently, Carmel and her business partner, Cecilia Carter, owner of Cecilia Carter Counseling, collaborated to open Wise Counsel. Wise Counsel is a private practice offering group therapy for individuals and couples, clinical supervision for counselors pursuing clinical license, consultations for therapists opening their practices, and training and workshops for corporations. Carmel and Cecilia provide services in both Missouri and Illinois. You guys, these are the women that we call when our sons and daughters need help and we can't understand them. These are the women that I have to call when I needed help. These are the women that you could call if you needed help. As you know, over COVID, so many people struggle with mental isolation. As I am in East St. Louis Senior High School, I get to see it firsthand how our children were really left behind during COVID. They were isolated. They had to do things on their own. They were lost and they were engulfed in the internet. And so those things played a factor on their mental health. So whenever you're looking at children, be kind to them because they're trying to figure out who they are and they're in a 2-year delay. I don't know if you realize that, but they are in a 2-year delay. So be kind to our kids right now because they are very necessary for the next generation. And what these women do, counseling couples that had problems, counseling people like us that had problems, they look like us. So therefore they know us. They know that it's more than just trauma. This goes back historically. So I'm going to ask that you guys stand up and give a warm welcome to Ms. Carmel Brown.
Good evening, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you all today, and thank you to Tammy for sharing this great event with us and asking me to be her keynote. When she asked, I definitely didn't hesitate to say yes. And the reason for that is for the very reasons that Antoinette just mentioned. Because it's our people. It's because these topics, we haven't heard from people that look like us very often in the past. And so this is very necessary. And I've heard some common themes tonight. I've heard the loneliness. I've heard that a lot of times when people are struggling, they don't always feel like they belong. I heard this young lady say she felt well again when she got back to her regular school district. She fit in. And that sense of belongingness is very important. And I also heard feeling as though there were no other options. People need to know that they have choices. And we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening. So Cecilia, she's going to kind of bounce things off of me here and there. Like Antoinette said, this is my partner. We actually work together. She's a Missouri clinician. I'm an Illinois clinician. So we are kind of tag teaming both sides of the river. With regard to therapy, both of our practices have been very busy, so that collaboration is certainly necessary. So tonight, we're going to talk about mental health compared to mental illness, because people use those terms interchangeably. And I think it's really important for people to understand the difference between mental health and mental illness. We're also going to talk about trauma. We're going to define trauma. What is trauma? What does it look like? And we're going to look at what mental illness, mental health, and trauma, how those things impact the risk for suicide. We're also going to talk about some ways to provide support to people that may be suffering with mental illness or have been exposed to trauma or may be at risk for suicide, and maybe some things that you can do. So before I get too deep into what we're going to talk about this evening, I want you to look at someone next to you and say, I'm glad you're here. You know, sometimes we fail to remember that the basic, simple things matter. For people to know that their presence is important. And as we talk about suicide this evening, it's really important for us to understand that a lot of people that believe that they need to end their life or that their presence on this earth is no longer needed or necessary, most often they just don't think anyone's glad that they're here. They don't think that it's going to matter that they're gone. And we spend a lot of time talking to people about those things, right, Cecilia?
I think it's equally as important to honor that. It's important to want other folks to love on us, but it's equally as important, just as the young lady spoke about, to love on ourselves. We can look for validation, outside validation all the time, but anytime we look for external validation, if we're not able to get that, then we're just kind of lacking. So it's so important to pour into yourself and learn how to love self first, and then give from our overflow. So I want to honor that as well.
Absolutely, thank you. And so I've already mentioned our objectives for this evening. So moving on to mental health, I'm simply going to give you the Oxford Dictionary definition of mental health. It is a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. It is a person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It impacts how we think. Our mental health impacts how we feel and how we behave. And it determines how we handle stress as well. And also how we relate to other people. And so it's really important for us to remember that mental health is important at every stage of life. We're talking about our youth today, and most often in the past, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there, with the Black community, when you go back generations, we didn't always give our youth a voice. And what I see here tonight is that we're doing that, and that makes me very proud of our community. That we understand that it's no longer stay in a kid's place. That it's no longer, what do you have to be worried about? That it's no longer, wait till you get to be my age. That we understand that the stressors that they face every day are severe. And sometimes life-changing, life-altering. So I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation. And so when it comes to mental health, I want you to think of it in terms of just like physical health. Every single person has mental health. And so a person can have poor mental health or good mental health. You can be healthy or not healthy, just like your physical health. So just keep that in mind. Now, 1 in 25 Americans live with a serious mental illness, such as PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, some major disorder of the brain. So 1 in 25, that's a lot. That's pretty significant. And so I want to briefly talk about what causes mental illness, because that is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. They're just simply not aware of what causes mental illness. Now, early childhood adverse circumstances. And that is what you're exposed to during the early years of your life can certainly have an impact on your brain health, on mental illness, mental health. And what I'm referring to is things like violence, and maybe you didn't necessarily receive violence or you weren't on the receiving end of violence, but simply witnessing violence can be very traumatic. And sometimes you witness it indirectly. So, for example, living in a neighborhood where there's violence, you may not have necessarily seen someone get shot, but knowing that it's happening right around the corner as a child, that can be very scary. And sometimes we have disregarded the impact that can have on a child's mental health moving forward. And so it's really important for us to understand that those are things that we should be talking to our kids about and helping them process those things and making sure that they're processing them in a healthy manner. And looking for those signs that they may need to talk to a professional. And chronic medical conditions. So our physical health impacts our mental health, and our mental health also impacts our physical health. So a person that has chronic medical problems can certainly end up having a mental illness. For example, a person that has cancer, let's just use cancer as an example, over time that person is dealing with some major stressors. It's highly likely that they could end up having a mood disorder like depression. So that's something that we need to start looking at in our medical community as well. When people are dealing with severe and chronic medical issues, what's going on with their mental health. And biology and chemical imbalances. If there's a family history of mental illness, a person is at a higher risk of developing a mental illness, just like everything else. When we go to the doctor, and they give us all those forms, that 35 forms we have to fill out before we see the doctor, they ask us about family history, right? They ask us that for a reason, absolutely. Because they need to know if you have a family history of high blood pressure or diabetes and such. Because if you do, you are highly likely to, well, you're more likely than someone that doesn't have that family history of developing one of those disorders. Mental illness is no different. And we certainly have to start treating our brains as though they are in the same house as the rest of our organs and body parts, because it certainly is. So lifestyle is also something that can cause mental illness, and loneliness or isolation. There's a lot of studies out there that show that loneliness and long-term isolation increases the likelihood of a person developing a mental health disorder. So that's the gist of why people develop mental illnesses. There's so many other reasons, but those are the basics. So I want to briefly define trauma. And I think it's really important for us to talk about this real quick, because you're hearing about it all the time on the TV, on the internet. People are talking about trauma. It's a buzzword these days. And I think most people know what they're referring to when they're talking about trauma, but everyone does not. And so I'd like for you to just have a very basic, general definition. It's an emotional response to a distressing event.
Can I add?
Absolutely.
And if we can take it even smaller to honor that trauma is anything that's psychologically disturbing, right? So if I don't like dogs and a dog comes in and I'm looking at it, that could be traumatic for me. Oftentimes we invalidate other people's experiences because what I felt toward the dog may be different than what you felt toward the dog. And it's so important to validate each other's feelings, which is to simply say what you feel and how you think matters. So to honor that trauma can be anything, and we have to give grace around it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right. It's your response to the event. Two people can witness the exact same thing and have a completely different emotional response to it. So keep that in mind.
Signs and symptoms of trauma. I think it's important that we talk about that this evening because, once again, we're hearing so much on the internet, it's really important that everyone understands what they're hearing and what does it mean. So a person that is having a trauma response sometimes has things like intrusive thoughts, very negative thoughts, nightmares, flashbacks, insomnia, memory loss even. You've probably heard or probably seen on TV depicted in a movie or something that a person could recall their past because of some trauma that occurred. That truly does occur. Poor concentration and chronic pain. When Ms. Antoinette introduced me, you heard her mention that I'm very much interested in the mind-body connection. And so is Cecilia, by the way. It's important for people to understand that physical ailments, complaints from your children could mean that there's something emotionally or mentally going on. If your child's having chronic and ongoing stomach aches, if they're saying they're having headaches all the time, their back hurts, if you've taken them to the doctor and there's no real reason why that should be occurring, it's important for you to have them assessed by a mental health professional. Being emotionally overwhelmed all the time. Ladies, I want to say, and gentlemen, being angry all the time is not normal. And we have some people that we've seen throughout time, all of us have. We don't need to say names or point fingers or anything like that, but we have all encountered people that seem to be angry all the time. That's just not happy. And don't seem to get along with other people very well. That could be a sign of a mental health issue or maybe a trauma response to something. And what we have to remember about trauma too is it changes the brain. And just because your life has gone back to normal doesn't mean that the symptoms go away. There's no switch that we can turn back on and say, okay, we're in the clear now, everything's safe. So getting that professional help is really important. And having a lack of interest in things that you're typically interested in could also be a sign. Muscle pains, like I said, fatigue and things like that. Cecilia, would you like to add anything?
Sure. Speaking to noticing someone being angry all the time. Irritability, moodiness. Sometimes we can say, oh, you know, such and such has an attitude, but she might be anxious. She might be overwhelmed, and we want to just kind of push it off as that might be her personality. Versus it could be a trauma response. It could be the way that she has developed a coping mechanism to deal with the outside world. And so to honor that, again, that brings peace. It may not just be that somebody has a bad attitude. They might be going through something, and we need to honor that as well.
Yeah, certainly. And societal wise, I heard a couple of our speakers today mention the pandemic and all the things that we've gone through. And a lot of people are just starting to realize the extent to which they were emotionally impacted by the pandemic. And they may not have necessarily experienced even the illness itself, but watching things on the television, once again, indirectly experiencing trauma. And things like school shootings, we've seen a lot of that here lately. And we won't even talk about the wars that are going on. We'll stay within the United States. But there are wars going on globally that we're also watching. Our brain is taking in all of these images. And it's important for us to stop and check in with ourselves every now and then to see how we're processing these things. Check in with our young people to see how they're processing these things. And historically, we've always said, monitor their screen time. But how many of us actually do that? We do when we can or when it's convenient, but it's kind of normal now for kids to just be at a screen all day. Everything's on the screen. And so it's important for us to just check in every now and then to see what they're hearing, what they're saying, and seeing if there are some things that you need to talk to them about. So
also, we need to monitor our own screen time too. I cannot watch the news for an extended amount of time. And so being able to control what information you're taking in also can help manage the way you feel on a daily basis as well.
absolutely, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of research out there right now on the impact, the emotional and psychological impact of social media on adults, not just our children, adults as well. And I personally have a lot of people that I see in therapy that are experiencing anxiety and depression because of what they're watching every day. And it's kind of a delusion because what you see on social media is a small percentage of what people actually have going on in their lives. I can present myself as a millionaire on the internet, but I'm not even close to that. So, I mean, yeah. But truthfully, I mean, you have to be careful about what you allow yourself to believe based on what you see on the internet. So statistics on trauma, 6 in 10 men and 1 in 5 women will experience trauma at some point in their life. 6% of the overall population will experience PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, at some particular point in their life. And that's from the Harvard Business Review. So, suicide. I want to move from suicide. We've talked about mental health, mental illness, and trauma. 2 out of 3 adults believe that they don't have enough information or knowledge to determine if someone is even at risk for suicide. And that is a problem, because if you have kids at home that are displaying symptoms and we don't know it, we think it's just regular teenage stuff, that can be a problem. And so it's important for us to do things like what we're doing tonight to make sure that that education is there and make sure that you have access to resources. In 2020 alone, guys, nearly 46,000 people died by suicide in 2020. How many of us heard that? And so we were hearing about COVID deaths, but we weren't hearing about 46,000 suicides. And so that's important for us to know. And we'll go into some more about that later. But in regards to suicide awareness, it is important for us to understand that emotional and mental pain and distress is not visible most often. And it's very difficult to talk about. You heard Tammy say earlier that she didn't really talk to people about it a lot. And guess what? When people lose a family member, a close one, especially when it's your child, to suicide, there are so many emotions that come with that, especially when most of us don't even know that that's a risk. It is important to understand that there's a certain level of isolation that comes with that. And because you don't think anybody understands. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind. Science can be subtle with regards to risk. But we can't be afraid to have the conversation. We have to start having this conversation on an ongoing basis. Not just talk about anxiety and trauma like we're hearing on the internet. What does anxiety and trauma do? How is it changing our lives? How is it changing our existence on this earth? How is it changing our quality of life? Okay? And then becoming familiar with the warning signs. We're talking about this evening, asking for help, and taking it serious. I have had plenty of people that think that their kid is just trying to manipulate them, get attention, and sometimes a person seriously is suffering emotionally, and they're struggling. They just want someone to show them that their existence, their presence matters. You know, Maya Angelou said, one of the main things you can do for a kid is make sure that when they walk in the room, that they see how that impacts you. So basically what she was saying was, do you light up when your kids walk in the room, or is it like, what do you want now? Little things like that over a period of time can have an impact on a kid and what they think about themselves with regards to importance. So it's really important that we give them our attention even when it's inconvenient, even when it's tired, when we're tired, and we look at them, make eye contact, and smile, and let them know, I'm listening, I'm present, I'm here. All right, so take it serious anytime you hear that your kid is maybe feeling sad, or maybe they don't want to be here. Now, suicide prevention, I want you to know that suicide awareness is suicide prevention. Doing exactly what you're doing right now and learning about suicide is the main way, the first way, that you're going to prevent something like suicide from occurring in your home and in your family. Now, you hear people say all the time, if someone wants to take their life, they're going to do it. There's nothing you can do. about it. And there's research that shows that at least some of the time, not all the time of course, at least some of the time, it can be prevented simply by how we respond to people. Look at somebody next to you and say, I'm glad you're here. So prevention and protection. There are strategies and education and advocacy that needs to happen on all levels. On the governmental level, and we are seeing that in our country, the government they have a lot of funds and grants and such that they're giving these days for mental health, so this is great. And also in our families, that's what we're talking about here tonight as well. What can you do at home? It starts at home. We've always heard that. It takes a village, it starts at home. Well, when it comes to mental health, and whether or not your kids develop a mental illness, and if they do develop a mental illness, whether or not they decide that their life isn't or is worth living, what happens at home is very important. And I won't go into all of the factors and circumstances for the sake of time, but I do want you to know that these are conversations we have to start having with our youth. It's happening at schools because they're hiring professionals such as Tammy and us to go into facilities. But a lot of people are afraid to talk about it at home. It's good that they get it at school, but they're around their peers at school. They're only going to be so vulnerable. And so it's important that we understand that the most intimate conversations surrounding this topic are going to happen at home with people that they trust.
And can I offer, it's important to ask the question, do you want to harm yourself? Do you want to leave here? How are you feeling? Sometimes we hear, oh, if you ask the question, it might plant the seed. If the seed is there, it's already there. We want to be sure to engage with our children and with each other to make sure that we're asking these questions and that folks feel seen and heard and validated.
I always tell parents that talking to their child about suicide is not going to prompt them to want to commit suicide any more than talking to your kids about sex is going to prompt them to want to have sex. So if the thought is there, it's already there. And so do you want them hearing about other kids on the internet talking about suicide? We have had very young kids, elementary school age kids, that have heard about challenges on the internet, hanging themselves, and right before they die, getting off of whatever the devices they're using, and some of them not making it or not getting off. So it's important for us to understand that they're hearing all types of dysfunctional, dangerous things from other kids. And so it doesn't matter if it's sex or suicide or something else. We want them to hear it from a reliable source, someone who's wise, their parents, the adults in their lives. So some of the warning signs, talking about death or suicide, obviously that's a warning sign. Seeking methods to commit suicide, which is by looking at those phones and those computers are important. What are they Googling? What are they searching? What are they looking up? And weapons. What's their language surrounding weapons? And do you have weapons accessible in the home? That's something else to think about. Make sure that they're locked up. I know that everyone thinks that they are secure in their home, but you want to make sure that you're double secure. You're going overboard with that security with regards to our young people. Reckless behavior, substance abuse is a really strong indicator that there's a risk there. And then putting their affairs in order. We don't see kids doing this as much as we do adults, but sometimes there's little subtle signs that they're trying to create a sense of finality with some things in their life. Giving away things, and some things that maybe at some point in life that were important to them, that you're giving away your baseball card collection, something that they've had since they were 5 years old, that type of thing. So just look for little subtle signs and symptoms and such. And then the main thing, if you find out that your kid is thinking about suicide, determine if they have intentions to take their life or they have a plan. Because there's a difference between assessing, and we do assess. I know I assess a lot of people. I actually used to go to some of the jails and do suicide assessments as well. I used to go to Madison County Jail and assess. Thinking about whether or not your life is worth living. Of course, that's a sign, and that's something you should take really serious. But when a person tells you how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, and they have some specific details, that is important to 911. Do not try to deal with that on your own. I don't care if it's your child or somebody that you love, or they say that they're not going to do it, they change their mind. When there's a plan and there's clear intentions, even though they may not plan to do it at that moment, that's a mental health, that's a psychological crisis, and you certainly need to call 911 and get them in to see someone at a hospital, obviously, so they can stabilize them and get them to a place where they want to be here, where they want to live, where they understand that there is help, they have choices. And sometimes suicide can be a place where a person gets to emotionally and psychologically where they just don't believe there's another option. They just feel like that's the only way out of the emotional pain that they're suffering from. And getting into that hospital and getting that inpatient treatment sometimes can help them get to a place where they understand that there are options, there are other ways to manage that pain and to reduce it.
And if you're unsure, call anyway. They might be upset, they might get mad at you, but it's better to have them in there and it be not as serious as you think it is, rather than, seeing something tragic happen. So if you're unsure, call anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And being careful about what you say. You want to be non-judgmental when you have, and whether it's a kid or an adult, if someone's thinking about taking their life, how we respond to that matters. Sometimes we say things like, I can't believe that you are talking this way. You have everything. You have a great life. We know from seeing on television millionaires, multimillionaires, celebrities, and we could go on and on about all the celebrities just in the last 5 years that have taken their own lives, that have died by suicide. And it wasn't about money or fame or status. It was about the ongoing suffering. Suicide prevention is something that we're implementing into the schools, into our communities more now, and that is something that I think everyone in this room is committed to being a part of. So make sure that after tonight, you don't leave this event not thinking about being committed. That you, moving forward, commit to what you can do to be a part of the change, the ongoing discussion about suicide, about mental health, about mental illness. I do want to talk about a couple of barriers, sometimes with mental health services that we often hear about, that it's not affordable. And I know that private practice, we both work in private practice, it can be pricey, but there are other options out there that are less pricey. And that there's a shortage of clinicians. I know that there's a shortage of clinicians, especially African Americans. We get a lot of people call us saying that they want an African American clinician. And we can only take so many people, obviously, but we're working really hard to make sure that we train as many clinicians as we can as a team. That's one of the things that we're offering with Wise Counsel is clinical supervision for people who want to get their degrees and get their clinical license so that they can practice. And support. Everyone needs a support system. That is important. That sense of belonging that I referred to earlier, that's where that comes in. When you have people that you know are going to listen to you, not judge you, not criticize you, and let you know their true thoughts, and they truly do care about your well-being, not just saying that they do, that's going to matter. It's going to go a long way. We're going to move forward because I know for the sake of time, we're going to just get past a few things here. But I do want to talk about, real quick, when it comes to support, make sure that the support you don't just give support to the person that lost a person by suicide. There's an entire community that's impacted by that when the communication isn't happening, when the conversations aren't happening. So this is something that we have to make sure that that ongoing support and that ongoing connection and that checking in with each other that Antoinette referred to earlier, that's ongoing, that's always happening. And so I want to, real quick, stop and check in with you guys. Does anyone have a question for us based on the things that we've said so far?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. With you talking about watching the news, and listening to all the negativity. And it has started taking my breath away. And I was wondering what was going on with me because and I had to stop watching it because it was so, everybody's getting killed, somebody's dying or some child. It's just stuff. And it's overwhelming. So you saying that makes me feel better, that knowing that I wasn't totally losing my mind because I was losing my breath.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's happening a lot. It's very common. So being self-aware, paying attention to emotional responses and physical responses that you have to such information is really important. When we're not self-aware and we're not paying attention to how we're responding to things, how it impacts us, long term, we're doing a lot of harm. So it's important that we check in and take action when we need to. Having a safety plan. Sometimes unplugging is helpful. But for some people, it goes beyond that. Unplugging, but then seeing someone clinically to get a little extra support may be helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Not really a question, a quick observation, and I guess maybe a call to arms, a call to action for the people in this room. What I've noticed is anything typically related to emotion, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, church, any of these things, there's a vast majority of women and very few guys ever present. Because it seems like amongst the black community, it's almost stigmatized or viewed as weak to embrace your emotions. And I think as a parent, as a sibling, as a husband, a loved one, I think people should, try to encourage and bring more guys. Like if you're going to these events, ladies, tell your husband, hey, look, come on, it might be something you might need to see or know to help us with our kid, not just me, or your brother or your dad or your son or whomever. And the guys who are in this room, you got to tell your boys, man, it's okay to embrace your emotions. It's okay to, share that side of yourself because, it takes a village. And it seems like the village is all women. I mean, I'm just being honest. As a guy, I do a lot of nonprofit events. I do domestic abuse events. I do church events. And there's always a vast majority of women. Now, that's not to kudos to the ladies, but we got to get these guys more involved because, especially as a man, when you're coming up, what you see of your dad is what you're most likely going to emulate. You know what I mean? And what you see of the guys who are your father figures is what you're going to emulate. So if the community tells you it's weak to be emotional, that's what you're going to think. And then you're not going to embrace these things. And that's how you get these murder suicides, these guys who snap and they kill their wives and kids and they kill themselves and things like that because they don't know how to process their emotions or they don't feel comfortable talking to anybody about it. So I think that, people, we really need to try to embrace this more and encourage the guys to come into the fold, seriously. The guys say, nah, y'all go ahead. Nah, come on. and I'm telling you as a husband, because my wife was like, hey, we going. I'm going because I don't want to hear it later because I get there. And then I get there and I will receive something that helps me, but I don't know until I get there. If you don't see better, you don't know better, so you don't do better. So you got to bring these guys to the fold.
That's good. Very, very true, very, very important.
I have one comment to make in relation to shift what you said about noticing changes in people that are giving away stuff. Also, those people that are normally always angry, but all of a sudden they, hey, how you doing? They happy to see you, they happy to be here. That's a clear indication. Adults and children.
Yes, absolutely. Some people call them mood swings, but severe and sudden mood changes or frequent mood changes that are pretty drastic. Certainly.
You talked about and you addressed the fact that there's not a lot of talk in our community about mental health and mental illness. But one of the things that I noticed, because I'm a big advocate for counseling, so I'm a big advocate for taking care of my mental health. But there is this stigma that maybe you guys can address that you're crazy if you go. And that's why it's a lot of us that don't want to embrace it because you're looked at, you're crazy if you go. but I look at it like crazy, because you need that help. Just like you made the example, if you go to a physical doctor to take care of your physical body, then you should do the same to take care of your mental health.
Certainly, certainly. And you're absolutely right, you're crazy if you don't. And what does crazy mean exactly? That is something that I refer to, and it doesn't have anything to do with mental health. I look at that as more so a person that doesn't really have good morals and values. Maybe their behavior is consistent with not having good morals and values. But having a mental illness is certainly not crazy. That is sometimes, most often, a biological issue, just like any other condition that we have. And when it comes to you're crazy or something's wrong, if you go to see a therapist, most of my clients are busy professionals. In fact, most of my clients are in the northern part of the state that work for big corporations that are, dealing with the stressors of life, trying to run a big company and have a family at home and figuring out how to take care of yourself. So when people come to see a therapist, it's not always due to a pathological issue. Most often it's, I'm just trying to do life.
I need sound. I need somebody to hear me and validate what I'm saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say parental awareness is very important. When my daughter, when I learned when she was there that she had mental issues and cutting herself. So I grew up in a family on my dad's side where mental illness is normal. And so it triggered, it skipped me when it came to my daughter. And I didn't really even realize there was anything wrong with my daughter. One day I just went in the room in her bedroom getting her ready for school, and I noticed cuts on her arm, and I'm like, what's this about? And so I immediately told my husband, and he jumped off the bed and was like, she ain't going to school, she's going to the hospital. So we went and got her some mental health that day, and what grade were you in? Okay, so that was 4 years ago. And she had gone ongoing therapy since then. Best decision we ever made. Even though she's not in the same mental state where she started, she repeats her therapy. And it's the best decision. Her college even helps me with her therapy. I'm talking about, they even give her a room. The first year she had a co-ed room with another student, and it didn't work for her. So the college actually worked with the therapist, and we got her a single dorm because that's what she needed. As a parent, I had to realize my daughter needed help. I didn't realize it. Like she said, since she was 12, I had no idea my daughter had issues. But it was trickled down from my dad's side of the family. I guess it was genetic, because I honestly did not see it. I had no warning until I saw the cuts on my baby arm, and I'm like, what? She was actually taking the razor blades out of my salon. To this day, I don't have razor blades in my salon because of my daughter. We have to be more aware as parents of what our kids are going through. Like literally, I will not even buy a box of razor blades. I won't even arch your eyebrows because of my daughter. I don't want my daughter to have access to those tools. We have to be aware. I never knew my daughter was going through it. I appreciate the fact that I learned about it because it made me more aware for my cousin's kids. Not only my kids, my family kids. So I'm just saying, as a parent in the room, this is our first time speaking about it. This is really silent. My family don't even know I'm here about this. Pay more attention to your children. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, she could have been dead. These scars that I seen were already healed, and they were embedded in her skin. Yeah. And I looked it up online. It was actually, like you said, it was an online trend that she was a part of. That the kids were cutting themselves 4 years ago. It was like normal. I had no idea because I'm not like that kind of online person with kids. But we, as a parent, I just want to say, pay more attention to what your kids are going through, or just pay attention to what they're doing, what their tools. Literally, I never knew my daughter was.
And it's not just paying attention to what they're going through. That's important, but it's also paying attention to what they're at risk for. Right. Is also very important. I think we forget that piece, and making sure that they know what they're at risk for. It's important for our kids to know that there's alcoholism in the family, that your grandfather
or your great-grandmother was an alcoholic, because they may go off to school. There's already, most people that have substance abuse issues usually are numbing something. They're usually trying to numb some pain or kind of stuff something down that's overwhelming for them. And so it's important to know what may have been going on, because we know in the Black community, there weren't diagnoses going on. People weren't going to see therapists in the Black community. So knowing what you know about mental illness now and looking at the behaviors that you observed, is it likely that that great-grandfather was an alcoholic? Is it likely that he was depressed? You know, I have had so many people say things like, yeah, well, my mom's always in the room. When she comes home from work, she goes into the bedroom and she's in there behind the closed door watching TV all evening. She comes out to eat and I have to go in there to talk to her, and she says it's because she's tired, because she's been at work all day. That may be someone that's depressed. They're withdrawn, they're not really interacting very much, they're not really enjoying life very much. And it's important to look at the patterns of behaviors and symptoms from one generation to the next and communicate those things to our young people so that they know that this is what we've seen, this is what we've witnessed. And here's the thing, we've talked about the biological and genetic predisposition for mental illness. There's also the social learning component, meaning our kids also can learn how to be depressed and anxious. If you have a parent that's withdrawn, doesn't really talk very much, always in their room, they're recording that. The brain is a little recorder. That's what the brain is doing, recording your entire experience as a kid. When you become an adult, we hit play. We play it all out. And so it's important to be very careful about what our kids are recording at home. Anxious. You know, you might have a person in your home or in your family that whenever people are coming over, they start losing control. They're cleaning up, they're freaking out, they're, yelling at people.
They're cutting up their mail, putting it in the garbage can. We don't want anybody to see it. It can look like paranoia, but all of a sudden the whole family is engaging in these ways, and it becomes a cultural norm. This is the way we do business, and we start to notice, Grandma was always irritable. What was that? Why did everybody start hiding the dishes when folks started coming around? Is this something that we have picked up, and now I'm at school and all of a sudden when somebody comes in my room, I'm hiding stuff? Am I nervous? Am I anxious? That could be a cultural norm that we pick up and start to act out as our everyday behavior.
Absolutely. And resilience is something that we have to touch on before we finish up this evening. Because resilience is our ability to adapt and recover after we've gone through a distressing event or distressing time, whether it's we've lost someone, whether it's a pandemic or whatever might be going on, a mental health crisis. How are you recovering after stuff? How are your kids recovering after they've gone through something? Is it something that's lingering on for extended periods of time and they don't seem to be getting better? It's months later, and they're just as upset, just as depressed and anxious as they were 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. That is a sign that they're not able to bounce back and recover, and you might need to call someone to get some help with that. So just keep that in mind. Resilience is, becoming aware of your personal stress level. That's important too. Everybody handles stress differently. How do you handle stress? A person that's dealing with mental illness, that's not very resilient, they're not going to handle stress very well. And we have a lot of stressors today. I want to summarize real quick. Psychological safety is something that I want to just kind of wrap this thing up with, because most of what we've been talking about tonight, is psychological safety. How safe do the young people in your life, the people in your life, not just the young people, the adults as well, how safe do they feel being vulnerable in your presence? Do they believe that they have to be perfect? Do they believe that if they make a mistake that you're going to make them pay? Or that you're going to love them less? Or that hug that they've been waiting for so long is just not going to happen because they made a bad grade? Someone mentioned earlier unconditional love. That is important. It's critical with regards to mental health. And so making sure that your kids feel safe being imperfect with you, that is important. You can issue consequences for bad behavior and still give that unconditional love. I always tell my parents,
hey, issue the consequences and go cook dinner and tell them dinner's ready. So offer opportunities to become informed, make sure that they know that there's help there. Don't force them to see a therapist. When you say, I'm going to call somebody, you need help, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you, you're crazy. Sometimes parents say these things to kids and it makes them go inward. Asking questions like, what's going on? Is there anything I can do? How long have you been feeling this way? Is it okay if I call somebody for you to talk to because I want you to have someone other than me to talk to? I just want to make sure you're okay. And after we go for, once or twice, if you don't like it or it doesn't make any difference, then maybe you can talk about not going back. But at least let's try it instead of forcing them. Because I've had a lot of kids that I've seen that didn't want to be there. And if they don't want to be there, it's not going to be effective.
The last thing I want to honor is that we normalize physical hygiene, right? Somebody tells you to go to the shower and you're like, okay, well, maybe I should go take a shower. We normalize dental hygiene. Going to therapy is normalizing mental hygiene. It's saying, hey, I have an issue, or I'm struggling, or I just need someone to talk to. And it gives you an opportunity to be heard and seen. And so just as important as physical hygiene and dental hygiene, we have to be mindful of our mental hygiene. And if you look at it like that, it doesn't feel so bad.
Absolutely. And our sleep hygiene is also a factor that impacts our mental hygiene. So closing up, I want to say lifestyle is important for our youth. Some of the things that they're eating that's being sold to them by restaurants and stores has a lot of chemicals in it. And most of the people in here, I've seen some of you guys out in the community, we like physical health. We want to be healthy. We like nutrition. We like to work out, things like that. We know what bad diets can do to our bodies. We talk about inflammation and all that stuff. But guess what? If the rest of our body can be inflamed by flaming hot Cheetos, so can our brains. Our brains are a part of our body, so it's important that you get educated on how to maintain good brain health, so to speak. And there's a lot of research out there on how exercise impacts the brain, mental health, mood. It's a natural antidepressant. So the chemicals in the brain respond very well to a healthy diet and exercise. And with sleep hygiene, there's a lot of research out there on how sleep impacts mental health. A lot of our kids are suffering mentally and emotionally because they're not getting enough rest. They're in those rooms with phones and screens and such. Most of us, when we were growing up, that stuff didn't exist. And so we went in our rooms and we went to sleep. Our kids are awake most of the night. So it's important that they're getting sleep, they're exercising, they're moving around, and that they're putting good stuff in their bodies. So self-care. All right? And so thank you guys for listening. Just so you know, there is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP.org, is one resource that you can utilize if you just want more information on suicide prevention. And then there's a number you can call, 988. It's a suicide and crisis helpline. And you can reach us at CeciliaCarterCounseling.com, CarmelBrownCounseling.com, or together, WiseCounselGroup.net.
Give them another hand. Give them
Thank you, Ms. Brown, Ms. Carter, for your expertise. There were a lot of notes. I took some. For a moment now, I just want to do something so we can open up the room, because sometimes we get so much deep information, sometimes it's hard for us to digest. And what I also learned as African Americans, we don't know when to breathe. Okay, so yes, breathe the right way. We can't hold our breath past a minute, but I'm not going to do that to you today. But I just want you to breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Yes, we just want you to refresh your breath for this evening as we continue to go on. There was a note they said some great things, and I want to talk about it real quick, a little personal journey of mine. I learned something, Ms. Brown, that being an African American in church was a coping mechanism for me. that I was using Jesus for a cover-up and not a cover-in. And a lot of times, the reason why we don't get the help that we need because we think we're going to the church all the time, but that's also a form of dopamine, if I'm not mistaken, because you get the height of the praise, but then when you go back home, it's back down to the depression. That is a key indicator that you need help mentally. Those endorphins. That is a key indicator that you need to seek help. And I'm telling you that because we've got onto the just going to the church part and just going into the everyday action, but somehow we still can't live life that God has blessed us with. And that's because we haven't learned how to balance the love of God and doing what He told us to do. And we're struggling with life's issues. And so I learned that after all those years I had been in church, I thought I had a relationship with Christ, but I learned that I was just staying underneath Him where He sustained me, because that's what His grace does. But I didn't really understand the concept of His love until I started being open and going to therapy. And my therapist told me, she said, you haven't grown up yet. You're still that 7-year-old little girl in an adult body. So those are the things that I would like you guys to unpack in your family. The little girl that you think is fast is brokenhearted. You need to ask who touched you. Those are the things that you have to digest when you're going through life. The little boy that's wanting to be closed off in the room, you need to love on him and ask him, how can I love on you today? That's why he's suppressing in his emotions and not saying nothing like he said. Those are the things that they're bringing to the light that sometimes we just overlook. Oh, that's just him. No, ask him who he is. Ask him where does he want to be in life. Love on him extra. Because what it all comes down to it, when dealing with suicide and we having the suicide prevention and the awareness, is guess what it is? Simply love. We have to get instructions on how to be kind to one another. Think about that. We have to get instructions on just how to show simple love. Think about that. So those are the things that we have to take into account as we are still living, as we're still alive, as we have an opportunity provided for us to give love. Give love. Be kind. Call somebody. I know you ain't talking to them because last time y'all got to the barbecue. It's over with now. It's over with now. Because we don't want you clowning at their funeral. Because we don't like that. You're going to be on the internet. Okay. We want you to take time and forgive. A lot of our issues is because we just won't simply forgive. We want you to accept their stories, whether you disagree with it, whether you don't believe it, accept it, because it's their story in their life. And now at this moment, I want to bring Mr. Chris Allard up here. He's been sitting so patiently. He has, like a gentleman. I'm going to read just a brief bio, Mr. Chris. Chris Allard is the founder and executive director of the 10th Man Foundation, a suicide prevention organization he started in honor of his brother, John Allard Jr., who died from suicide in September 2018. The term, the 10th man, is a reference to devil's advocate or alternative voice, which is what the organization provides to those who have started down the path towards suicide. Their focus is to raise awareness about depression and suicide prevention, as well as financially sponsors individuals in need of counseling. Chris has enjoyed a 30-year career in oil and gas logistics, working for companies such as Royal Dutch Shell, White Briar Technologies, and Circle K. Can you guys please give it up for Mr. Chris?
Thank you very much for that. And I have the unenviable task of following so many great speakers here, so bear with me and I'll do my best. As you said, my name's Chris, and on September 12, 2018, my life and the lives of my entire family changed forever. On that day, my brother, John Allard Jr., who was my best friend in this world, he made the decision that life was too painful to continue. So for most of us, that's an inconceivable thought, but for too many, that is really their reality. So right at 12:15 that day, John walked through my front door. Right as Cardinals pitcher Daniel Ponce de Leon threw the first pitch. You guys might remember him. He was the guy that kind of smarted off to Yachty, and the next day he was basically gone. So don't mess with Yachty. But it was a first pitch with the Cardinals game against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and it was a strike. It's funny how the things that you actually remember when something like this happens. And I said something along the lines of like, you're home for lunch break, and he said something along the lines of, yeah, I need to get out of the salt mines for a little bit and kind of clear my head. So for the next 45 minutes, he sat across from me and we just talked about really nothing. I had just moved home actually 12 days before. I was living in Austin, Texas, and my mom was going through cancer treatments. And it was getting obvious that things weren't going in the direction that we hoped. So I had basically packed up my life and I moved back home to Belleville, actually in the exact home that I grew up in. That John and I were raised as kids, sleeping in the exact same room I did on the second day of my life. So we sat across just talking about nothing. He was asking me things about what I was going to do with the house, etc. He even got up and in fact, my brother lived there for his adult life and raised his family there as well. So he noticed that something was wrong with the TV sound, got up, when he fixed it, it was his old TV. It was just a lot of nothing, just chit-chat back and forth. There was one topic that came up that in hindsight may have kind of raised some flag, but really there was no oblivious, or sort of no signs. But then I do realize at that time I was completely oblivious to any signs of depression. So after just a little bit, he did get up and go to the other side of the house where my mom was staying. And I didn't witness this, but apparently he went over and gave her a hug and a kiss and said something along the lines of, Mom, just know that I will always love you. And we were a loving family, but we weren't like the most affectionate family, so that's not something we would normally do. But again, it wasn't completely out of the ordinary, and again, I was completely oblivious to any signs. So a little while later, so he comes back through my side of the house and said something like, before I go back to the salt mines, I'm going to go take a walk and get some fresh air and kind of clear my head. A little while later, about 20, 30 minutes later, I left the house and I noticed his car was still in the driveway. Thought it was kind of odd for a little bit, but then I did remember, he grew up in this house. I remembered his old walk that he used to take. It was about a 30-minute walk, so again, didn't really think too much of it. So I take off to Chinooks and I'm doing some grocery shopping for my mom. While I'm there finishing up, my phone rings, and it's my mom. She says, hey, Chris, the sheriff is here. He's looking for John. I admit my very first thought was like, well, what did he do? And then she said something along the lines of like, well, it's something about a suicide watch. And that was the dagger. And so I finished up the store, hustled home. When I pulled in the driveway, there was just one sheriff's deputy there, and he was kind of looking around the property. And he asked me a few questions about the property, and thought like, well, and he didn't say anything specific, but, if John was wandering around here, where would he go? Well, I knew exactly where he would go, so I started to go that direction. He said, nope, stop. I suspected at that moment. So about 45 minutes later, now I'm surrounded by multiple officers from Belleville, the Belleville Police, other sheriff's deputies, the Illinois State Police, patrol, etc. And without them telling me anything, I knew what happened. So one of the officers came up to me and broke the news to me that my brother had died from a single gunshot to the chest. So I admit, I just matter-of-factly asked him a little more, some information about it. I did not shed a tear, I did not break down, because I knew I had a task ahead of me. My mom was inside the house, my dad was still at work. You guys might know my dad. My dad was John Howard Sr. of London Shoe Shop. Everybody seems to know my dad. So he was still in the shop, and so I made the decision, let's not tell him until he gets home, because I don't want him driving. So I knew I had these tasks ahead of me. So I basically compartmentalized everything and knew what I had to do. Sorry, bear with me here. So after that whole event, we decided that we were going to get, suicide had never been part of our lives. I literally think I used the word maybe 4 times in my entire life before that. I remember somebody in high school I didn't know very well had died from suicide, but other than that, I didn't have any personal connection to it. But at that moment, we decided that we were going to get ahead of this thing. So we put the word out there rather than kind of burying the story and using kind of covert words. We put right there in his obituary exactly what happened. And it's amazing how many people came out of the woodwork and said, I've got a story as well. And they were so thankful that we did that, and I'm so thankful that we did that as well. So it was maybe 9 months after that, and so my brother was a state's prosecutor. He was an attorney. He was a defense attorney for a little while, then he was a state's prosecutor for about 20 years at St. Clair County. And then he retired from there and went into private practice. So his former boss was Brendan Kelly, who's the current head of Illinois State Police. So when Brendan was in town at some point, I went and asked to speak to him, and I knew Brendan, just to ask him some questions, just to try to get some clarity. And that's when he told me things about that office and it goes back to something that you guys talked about trauma. So that office, the way that those attorneys work, when there's a heinous crime, and John he was actually one of the murder trial and heinous crime experts. So when something like that happened, they would actually go on scene. They would arrive. So they weren't necessarily first responders, but they started that investigation very early. And there was some subversive scenes, there was pictures and things like that. So that staff, and it's not just the attorneys, it's the clerks, it's everybody that's involved in that in preparing for that trial. They're looking at these things for 6 months, 9 months, up to a year sometimes preparing for this. And they call that secondary trauma. And we didn't realize how often he was experiencing some secondary trauma. So the other thing that Brendan told me was that when they were preparing for this trial, they would all have some kind of consensus about the way to try this particular case. And they would actually look to John and say, okay, 10th man, poke holes in our theory. I'm like, well, what's the 10th man? And that's when he told me, well, it's this reference to devil's advocate or alternative voice. So it really was his job to say, yeah, I know you all have consensus, but what about this path or this path or this path? And that's when the light bulb went off. I said, you know what? That's exactly what John needed in his life. In the days, the months, and even years leading up to that fateful day, he needed a 10th man in his life to tell him the path that he was going down was not the right path. And that's when the 10th man was born. So it was literally the next day. We started the organization. Within a week, I was on the news with John Kurtzborn. We launched this thing, and we have not looked back ever since. We're still small, but we're growing like crazy. And our main focus is, as the description says, we want to provide an alternative voice to those who have already started down that path of suicide. So a lot of what we do is around awareness. We do fundraisers as well. But we're now at the point where we've raised some pretty good funds, and we're actually sponsoring people who are in need. Our latest one, obviously I'm not going to go into details, but there was a local high school student who was in need. The parents did not want to, for various privacy reasons, they didn't want to have local help, so we were actually sponsoring that individual at an in-house therapy down in Florida. So those are the kinds of things that we're actually trying to delve into, and I'm very proud of how much growth we've made in a short period of time. Because of the launch of that organization, I've also then been able to, I didn't know we had a St. Clair County Suicide Prevention Alliance. So someone told me about it, I joined that, and have been a pretty consistent member of that organization ever since. That's where Tammy and our paths crossed, and I'm so thankful for just not being able to work with her, but also a friendship that we've developed, and we've co-presented at different events. And early on, because of the cooperation I was getting from the Suicide Prevention Alliance, I built a relationship with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which was mentioned earlier, and really started trying to get more of that presence down here in Southern Illinois. They're based out of Chicago, at least the Illinois chapter is based out of Chicago, and so a lot of their focus is up there. And with the help of Tammy and myself and some others, we're really trying to get more funding, more resources, just more attention down here in Southern Illinois. And I am proud to say that just last week, I was elected to the board of directors for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for the Illinois chapter. And I think, and my hope is that continuing to work with Tammy and others, that we'll really be able to pull some of that attention down to Southern Illinois and support programs that she's doing, that I'm doing, and that others that they want to create an organization or participate in ours. We'll hopefully have a much bigger presence in Southern Illinois. I did have I'm a sort of a poet. There's no way I am reading my poem. No way. But basically, that's my story. I just wanted to thank Tanya for the opportunity to come and speak to you. Honor my brother. I want to continue to honor my brother. I want to grow the 10th Man as much as possible. I invite anybody to, and we're still kind of changing up our website, but I invite anybody to go to the10thman.org, and it's all spelled out. Check us out. We're doing some things like, I did become the chair for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness Walk for St. Clair County. Last year was my first full year as the chair. Again, Tammy's been a fantastic advocate of that. And so that will be October 14th, whatever that Saturday is, October 14th? Yeah. And there's some flyers out there that has a little QR code that you are welcome to scan and register, get your team. We moved to downtown Belleville. It was in Bellevue Park, kind of a little bit hidden for quite a few years. So we decided to, again, just let's get it out of the darkness. Let's bring it downtown and really create a big event out of it. So you're welcome to join us down there as well. So again, just thank you for everything that you do, Tammy. Thank you to everybody who's in this room. I mean, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have some reason, some story of your own. And so I very much appreciate it. So again, on behalf of my organization, the 10th Man, and the opportunity to honor my brother John's legacy, I'm grateful to be working alongside Tammy and others here. And you're here because you have a story similar to mine. You might be here to grieve. You might be here to heal. You might be here to celebrate. But most certainly you're here because you care enough to help. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We are with you in spirit, and thank you for your work that you do. I heard a very important piece, and you said that somebody was involved with the Circuit County Clerk's office attorney. I may need them. Just thought I'd put my plug in there. Okay. Now that I'm free from that. So yes, again, there are some things that I also want to bring light to at this moment as well. We're talking about mental health, but I want to translate it into mental wealth. Because once we have our mental health in our community, in our day-to-day, it promotes mental wealth. That means we're able to talk to one another, we're able to communicate well, we're able to articulate what it is that we're feeling, articulate what it is that we're going through, and we are able to verbalize if this is for me, if I'm uncomfortable. And so mental wealth has everything to do with how much you're growing inside. It also has everything to do with your happiness that you are in control of yourself. When you invest in your mental health, and I'm telling you this from the age of 7, I have been involved in therapy till now, to this day. And I am 36. It's worth every dime I've spent because it saved my life. The only reason I am able to talk about it is because I invested in my mental health. Now I perform in my mental wealth. And what I mean by that is I'm doing what I'm designed to do. And that's what happens when you invest in your mental health. In every aspect of your life. Education, go get it. Do the dream, become the dream. That is your mental wealth. And you'll be surprised at how many years that you'll say, man, if I would have did that then, how much freer could I be now? But that's what it's about. So when you start investing in your mental health, you gain your mental wealth. Our next speaker is Javonda Quinn. Javonda Quinn is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at WGU, where she oversees the employee experience focusing specifically on retention efforts. She has more than 20 years experience in the education industry, developing and managing programs, supporting recruitment and retention efforts, overseeing staff and student engagement, pipeline developments, and community outreach. She has proven success in recruiting, training, coaching, team building, mentoring, and advising staff and students from diverse backgrounds. Her student-facing roles includes helping youth and young adults pursue their high school equivalency diploma, navigating the higher education process, exploring career paths, and recruitment and retention of minority students into medical school. In her downtime, she loves spending quality time with her family that includes her husband, 2 sons, and 2 furry dogs, Bear and Rocket. I want you guys to give a warm welcome to Miss Quinn.
I don't think I'm going to remember how to use this. You know, I don't know where it is, but I was just going to replay the video that we had for the slideshow, but I don't know how to get that up so much word like that. But good evening. I'm used to saying good morning and afternoon. I speak a lot at my job every week and monthly, doing presentations and things, so this is a part of what I do almost every day. And so good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here with us, helping us celebrate the life of my niece, my mother's granddaughter, my sister's niece, and my niece and nephew's cousin. I am here not only on my behalf, but for my family. I want to thank Tammy for allowing me, giving me the opportunity to do this. She asked me to do the tribute. I was like, no, I'm not going to do the tribute. And I was like, well, she's like, this is what you do. And I was like, well, I don't want to do the tribute. I talked too much at work. But I am honored to be able to stand before all of you this evening to share with you about my niece. She was a beautiful soul, Tamara Hamilton. And so I have a few things. I was like, well, but look at the time. Let me say, like the church always says, I'm not going to be before you long. I'm going to try to do that. I have some things I want to share with you. But I'm going to kind of go off of my script, go away from the script that I had prepared for you tonight. But I do want to remind you that there is a QR code out on the table if you want to donate. If you're not donating tonight, certainly take a picture of that and think about the reason why you're here tonight and why Tammy has decided to do this, trying to bring awareness to mental health and suicide prevention. As you heard the speakers tonight talk about mental health and suicide, it is on the rise. You heard Tamara talk about the numbers and what that looks like in St. Clair County last year and this year. And the numbers sound small, but in the U.S., those numbers are trending upward. And we have a duty as a people of color to recognize that and see what we can do. And again, thanks to Tammy, she's taken this charge. She's turning her pain into passion. And I appreciate that and I appreciate her for asking us, my sisters, and a couple of her friends to be a part of her board in this mission that she's now moving forward with. So again, if you find it within yourself to help support, she's about $1,000 less than that. I still am supporting, I have to give myself, so I'm going to knock that down some as well. But again, know the why as to why we're doing this. This is a super important topic. All of you have heard about this, and so I'm looking forward to seeing us meet that goal. We're looking to do this annually. You'll hear her talking about this. We're going to start on the ground running right after this and start planning for next year. This event is going to get bigger. We started small, but it is going to grow, and so we want your support even after today. And so with that, I want to say that I am here again, not only for myself, but for my family to do this tribute for Tamara. And I found this poem. It's titled, She Is Gone. see if I can read this. I wear eyeglasses, but it's like I still can't see. Crazy. But it's titled, She Is Gone. And I'm going to read this here. You can shed tears that she is gone, or you can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that she has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love that you share. You can turn your back on tomorrow or live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she is gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty on and turn your back, or you can do what Tantan, as we affectionately call her, would want. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. I think this poem is a great way for us to remember our loved one. You may be here because you know someone who may have taken their lives, or you may have lost someone just from natural things or from illnesses, whatever it is. If you have a loved one that is no longer here on this earth with us, this poem is something that I thought is a great way to move forward. Tamara was an amazing human being. She had a sweet spirit. Her soul was special. I always saw her with a smile on her face, and even if she was upset about something, she never might be smiling. And so, that's who she was. That's the kind of person she was. It was very hard to know that she was troubled or challenged with something, because her face was always showing this beautiful smile. And I'm going to say this, out of all of the kids, our nieces and nephews, she is one that I kind of put up here, because you didn't often see her getting in trouble or, these things. And so if I had kids, I was hoping that my kid would be the kid that I didn't have to spank a lot or fuss at or whatever it is. You didn't see a lot of that. It could be to a person's detriment or a family's detriment to do those things, and I say that because of that. We want to make sure, as you heard these speakers talk about, that you're asking questions, that you're paying attention. After this event in our family, I know that I have become even more attentive to my kids, and my sisters would say, you're just so overbearing, you're just so overprotective. But because of the space that I have found myself in my career, I've worked with youth all of my career, and this is the first time in my career that I'm not working with youth. I work with adults now. And I saw so many of them challenged and struggled, even with suicide. I talked to several students off the ledge at night trying to talk with them and their parents. So I know that it's real and that it's out there, and we have to be tentative to our own children as well, and making sure that we are not missing signs. I know Tammy had some points after this in her life. She kind of beat herself up because she has a counseling background and she felt like she missed the signs. But it's very hard to do. Like I said, Tamara always had a beautiful smile on her face. She didn't always know some of those things, but in hindsight, it's 2020, she was able to kind of pick up some things here and there. Like Tamara, she found after coming home from college, would be in her room, right? And she's like, I didn't know, I would ask if she wanted to go to the mall, but she was like sitting in her room reading books all the time. And it's those things that these people talked about, those signs, those small things that you may not pay attention to, that I call as a call to action, as someone said, for you all to do that in your own homes and ask questions. Tamara left us with a lot of great memories. She was someone you could talk to and really have intelligent conversations. She was a thinker. She loved her family. She loved her cousins. And my niece, Brianna, she's here. I'm super excited that she was able to make it here. Brianna now lives out of state, so I'm glad she was able to make it in here, even though she was challenged at the airport this morning. She made it in. They were like besties, like two peas in the pod. They grew up together as little people and then as teenagers and some early part of their adulthood. But they were very, very close. And one of the messages that Tamara left here for Brianna, she left a note. I don't know if many of you know that, but Tamara put a note together. And one of the messages she left for Brianna, she told her that, she said, you can make it. She said that. And I am just very, very proud of my niece because she has absolutely excelled in life. And she's done that, and she's done that on her own terms. And I'm super proud that she has decided to move forward in a positive way. And so I'm glad that she's living up to that message that Tamara left for her, you can make it. And so to all of you out here who may be experiencing these things, and Tammy for the first time tonight shared openly, and thanks for being vulnerable because a lot of people aren't able to do that. To share that she's had those thoughts herself. But take that message, you can make it. She has persevered through so many things in her life, and it's very inspiring to see her dealing with the things that she has dealt with, and to be able to get up and walk and make a conscious decision that I am going to move forward. I am going to live in a space of happiness. And so I encourage you all who may have experienced something like this, that you can move forward and that you can make it. And so I stand on that message that she left here for Bianca. One of the trips, I want to share a couple of memories with you. One of my trips, I used to have to go to conferences in Tantera. And one year I took Bianca and Tamara to watch my boys. And then for some reason, Bianca was able to go this one year. I took Tamara a couple of years before she left us. And on this particular trip, I have the kids in the room. My mother used to go at the beginning, but the kids were in the room and they jumping on the bed and having a great time, and Tamara's just kind of hanging out. And so I left to go to my workshop. And I came back and Tamara, the boys, they were quiet. It was quiet and they were looking at TV. I opened the door, they were like, "Mommy!" And they jumped on the bed and the ruckus starts. Tamara said, okay, it's you. It's you the problem. It's your energy. When you come in here and you shake their head, you bring that energy in here and they just start going crazy. It's you. I know what it is, now it's you. That was what she was. Then she just fell out laughing. And I was like, it's not me. But that's how she was. And it was this other thing that she used to do. My son, Amari, he's in college now, he's home. His game was canceled. I was like, yes, I'm missing the game because he's going to pitch tonight. He plays baseball. So his game was canceled. I didn't miss the game. She's like, Tika's like, you can't miss a game. I'm like, well, I want to go to all the games. But one of the things that she would do, we often cooked on Sundays and went to my mother's house, my sister's house. We would cook on Sundays, and I would take the kids with me. And Tamara always made it a point, both her and Bianca did this. Tamara would always make a point to speak to my son. At the time, I only had the one, Amari. At the time, I'm the last one in the family to have kids, so I was the only one with a baby. And so Amari would be sitting, and Tamara would always go over, and Amari would tell these knock-knock jokes. At this time, it was like 6 or 7. Knock-knock, who's that? Yeah, those jokes. Amari would tell those, and Tamara would die laughing. I'm like, okay, not that funny. And so I said to her one day, I said, Tamara, why do you always laugh at Marty's jokes? And she's like, because he's so funny. You know, I feel like I'm sounding like her. Because I know I sound like Tammy, and they kind of sound like I'm sounding like Tamara. But she's like, he's so funny. And I'm like, really? Not that funny. And then this other thing that she would do also, she would always make it a point, and again, her and Bianca would do this, come in the room and they'll go to him and say, hey, Maury, I always spoke to him, and I just randomly asked her one day, why do you always speak to Maury? And now that she's gone, this is so profound, she said to me, because I don't want him to feel like he's alone. And I was like, wow. And one of the things that was shared at her funeral, I remember one of her college roommates got on the stage and shared her thoughts. And one of the things I remember very, very vividly when she was saying this, it just took me by surprise. I was totally shocked to hear this when she was saying this, but she said that Tamara often felt like she was a book on the bottom of the shelf. And I was like, really? why? We always work together, we always had a great time. I never knew that, right? And so for her to say that I never wanted him to feel like he was alone, I really absolutely appreciated that, and I appreciate that today. And still today, Bianca does do that too, make it a point to always acknowledge. And so I say to you all, acknowledge, and I think someone already said, show people that you see them. I think it was Maya Angelou said, it's also, people will oftentimes, I'm paraphrasing, so I'm going to say it completely, right? But they may never remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel, right? And so I employ all of you to do that and make people feel like you see them, like you hear them, right? It's that you leave them with. We were blessed to have our mom watch all of our kids when they were younger. And tonight I want to say thank you to my mother for being there, always providing that resource, and that's a privilege. A lot of people don't have that, right? To be able to give your children over to your mom and know that they're going to be in a safe place, and they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to eat. My mother likes to cook and fix that plate for those kids. And so to the point where my kid will come home and don't want to eat my food. And say, well, did you cook it like Granny? If you don't sit down and eat this food, we're going down here. But my little one was here tonight, they had to leave. But I would always say that, even if I would cook it today, is it like Granny's? I don't know, just eat it this morning. But I want to say that memory here, my mother would often share with us that Tamara cried sometimes at night, and Tammy would get her in the car and drive her out at night, try to put her to sleep. She couldn't get to sleep, so Tammy would take her to my mother. That night, my mother was like, I'll get her, just go on. And my mother feed her whatever she did, and she's off to sleep. But the other thing that Tamara would do, this is when she's walking, now probably like 1 or 2, when my mother would be standing in the kitchen, or she might find her in the bed lying down, Tamara would go over and pull on a tug on her dress or pat her at the bed and say, Nanny, eat. Look, my mother's words, you already know what I'm going to say. Nanny, eat. So she was a beautiful child, just special in her own way, so many loving memories, things that I can say, and these are some of those staple things that we all experience from Tamara that I chose to share with all of you tonight. She loved learning. She loved learning. She often watched my twin, Jolanda, back there. You all may have seen her on the internet, cooking and baking things. Tamara, in those last few years, would watch her cook, would go to her house to watch her cook. And she wanted to learn that from her, and to sit there to learn. I didn't get that gene from my mother. It was an awesome cook. I didn't get that. Jolanda did, but Tamara would do that. She wanted to learn. She was in college, her 3rd year in college, and she wanted to finish school. She wanted to be a forensic scientist, and I just was looking forward to that because I was like, man, I can't wait to see what I thought she was going to be a doctor. I think it was someone in Cortez's family who was pursuing that, and we thought Tamara was going to look into that as well. But I'm going to let, I share this other memory, I'm going to let my sister Tiki have this. Her claim to fame is that she's the favorite aunt. She is literally the favorite aunt. She spent a lot of time with Tamara also, because if you saw Brianna, you saw Tamara. If you saw Tamara, you saw Brianna. They would spend a night at each other's house. She would literally be over there half the time. She would get Brianna over to Tammy's house. They would always do that, and Tiki would say that these kids were our kids were her kids. Call me mama. She told my boys, I'm your mother. And I gave her the honor to name my kid who was here tonight, Aiden. She named him Aiden. And she wanted to be his godmother. I was like, well, I like his godmother. She wanted it all. But we all had lots of great memories. She loved her cousins, Tony, Big D, who's no longer here with us, Fred. They all just kind of grew up together. They were like siblings, literally. They were always together. Again, great memories to share about her. She was full of love. She was a very spiritual person. Many of you may not know that about her, but she's a very spiritual person to the point where I think it was Carmel who was talking about sort of how a person who's on this path and feels like when they get in this space, this dark place, that they cannot come out and they start making some steps. Or it might have been Chris talking about this. They start making these steps or plans, you know, kind of saying their goodbyes almost in an indirect kind of way. And Tamara, after we found this out, we knew that she was doing this fast. She was doing a Daniel fast. She did a Daniel fast before she took her life. And so it was that planning phase that she found herself in, that she didn't feel like she could come out of this dark place. But just pay attention, be aware for those kinds of signs. I'm just happy that our family had all of the 22 years with her, to spend with her and see her grow to become a young woman. She was full of life. We have a lot of memories we are able to think back on, and I think there's a song from the movie Coco. You all probably seen it if you have some young people in your home, Coco. And I love the song. My little one here, he would always cry when this song came. We watched the movie like 5 times. I'm exaggerating, but we watched it a lot. Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, don't let me make you cry. For even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a song to you each night we are apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me each time you hear a sad guitar. Know that I'm with you the only way that I can be. Until you're in my arms again, remember me. And so I leave that with all of you tonight to remember your loved one. They're not with you tonight, but remember in your dreams they're thinking of you, and that's a place where you can meet them. Or you can also think about this in the way Tam Tam would. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. The last thing I'll share with you is that we want to go into a candle lighting ceremony. You should all have these candles on your table and a lighter on your table as well. On your candle lighting ceremonies are great ways for us to remember our loved ones. And so if you can take a candle to help celebrate to help celebrate our loved ones tonight, just pass that candle along and share that. It's kind of fancy. See if you know how to turn that on. And just light the candle. And while you're doing this, lighting the candle, think about your loved one. You can say their name out loud, or you can say it to yourself. Take a moment of silence. Candle lighting is a ritual of remembrance to sort of perpetuate and the day to ease the pain that you might have with your loved one. So if you can, go ahead and light your candle, and we're going to take a moment of silence here. While you do that, just kind of share that lighter. You all get an opportunity to do that. And think about your loved one. Who are you leaving? Who has left you? Right? Who's left you? Think about the memories that you shared with them. Right? Think about how you can go forward and celebrate their life and honor their life. And I am so glad that Tammy was able to honor Tamara's life. Tamara loves to travel. And Tammy has chosen to travel. You all see her, she's always gone somewhere. But she does that because that is a part of how she grieves. That is a part of how she celebrates her daughter. Right? We all grieve in our own ways. And so you never know why a person is doing what they're doing. But this is a way that she's able to connect with her daughter because she knew that Tamara loved to travel, and she was able to be blessed to be able to provide her daughter with that. And I'm thankful that she is able to, and in a position, God has blessed her to be in a position to travel, to be able to honor her own daughter in that way. So if you take a few moments to think of your loved one here, we're going to give you a moment of silence to do that. And after we do that, Tamara is a pastor here that's going to do a song. Okay, and so while we're doing that, you can call Pastor up for that. Thank you all for being here tonight. It was awesome to see some faces I haven't seen. I'm not all out like most of my family might be, but again, thank you for being here with us tonight. We're going to get this song from her tonight. Thank you.
Saddens me to say, while the world we're living in today, try to can't explain why my king keeps me in danger's way. My skin is a badge of honor. I love the way it's on me. Couldn't be more prouder of the skin I'm in, the blessed to be. My skin is a badge of honor. I love the way it's on me. Couldn't be more prouder of the skin I'm in, the blessed to be. Proud skin on the face of my brother. Proud skin on the face of my mother. Wear your proud skin. And wear your proud skin. Tired yesterday. Hope today ends in a better way. My skin can make me say how you hate me like a Monday. My skin is badge of honor. I love the way it fits on me. Couldn't be more prouder of the skin I'm in. I'm blessed to be me. My skin is a badge of honor. I love the way it fits on me. Couldn't be more prouder of the skin I'm in. Blessed to feel free. Proud skin on the face of my brother. Proud skin on the face of my mother. Wear your proud skin. And wear your proud skin.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our evening. Again, my name is Antoinette Ayers. Please follow me on Facebook. They told me to mention that I have a book entitled I'm Done Being Broken in the back. If you guys want to check it out, it is a story and a self-healing workbook as well. If anything, I would like for you all to take a moment and say good job. Good job. Say good job to yourself. A lot of times we want our things to be very entertaining, but we have to fall in love with enlightenment as well. And so this is one of those nights where you have been enlightened, you have been educated. And so I'm thankful that you guys are here supporting Tammy. Again, she has a goal to meet. So you guys, I would like for you, if we're going out, please scan the barcode. She's almost at her goal. Her goal was to reach 5,000 tonight, okay? We want to get there. Donate in the memory of someone. Donate because God told you to. Don't fight what he told you now. Don't do that. Don't do that. But it has been a pleasure being your MC tonight, and we're going to leave out with a word of prayer. May you go in peace knowing that God loves you. May you walk with him hand in hand day and night. May the light shine on you so dwelling because God is living in you. May you know that he made you perfect in all your ways. May every vision come alive, where everything that your hand touched be abiding in his spirit, where everything that you touch comes alive and you are able to afford whatever he said you can have, for you are his. You walk with him, you talk with him, you look like him, and you are his. It is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.